starting off with the Buffalo Bills, starting off with the Arizona Cardinals. Definitely the shootout game, at least on paper, for week 10. Got Josh Allen, who's been on fire, especially last week against Seattle, kind of got him back to being what he was towards the beginning of the season. We'll see if that continues. Arizona's defense is at least a little bit better, even though they're banged up right now, a little bit better than what we see out of Seattle on a week-to-week basis. Kyler Murray has been the QB1, and he's running. Even when he's not efficient throwing the ball, he's running at nearly, not quite, but nearly the clip of a Lamar Jackson from last year, which is just giving him this ridiculous floor. So if he does have a decent day, not a great day, but a decent day throwing the football, he's going to continue to be a QB1. So both of these guys, top 3 quarterbacks, you play them, plug and play them, and you're good to go. We'll go back to the Bills side of the ball real quick because I want to talk about the running back situation. I have Zach Moss and Devin Singletary ranked right next to each other. Moss at 26, Devin Singletary at 27, making them both RB3s, making them both disgusting, making them both plays that I wish I could just avoid if at all possible. Again, recognizing that with these bye weeks, week 10, with some of these injuries, you may not have better options. And unfortunately, having them ranked right next to each other doesn't really give you a great window as to which one's a little bit more valuable. It seems the team is moving more and more towards Zach Moss. But even if that's the case, from a total opportunity standpoint, from a total touch standpoint, it's still pretty 50-50. The only thing that I feel confident in saying is that when it comes down to the red zone, when it comes down to the goal line carries, that does seem to now be Zach Moss's domain, because that he has outplayed Devin Singletary the past couple of weeks. Remember, 2 weeks ago, he had 2 touchdowns, but the past couple of weeks, he has outplayed Devin Singletary at that part of the field pretty confidently. So that's the only thing that I can really say, which is why I have Zach Moss ranked 1 spot in front of Devin Singletary, where I would have a little bit more confidence in Moss, because I do believe that he at least has a chance. If he doesn't get vultured by Josh Allen himself, he has at least a better chance to score a touchdown. So that's why you have him a little far ahead. You could, like I said, you could play both of them in RB3s, low-end RB2 fill-ins for your bye week players. Never going to feel good about this situation, though, this backfield, because it's even when you start to break down what's the split going to be between a Devin Singletary and a Zach Moss, it's another team out there that we've talked about where the bigger question becomes, are you actually going to involve the backfield at all? And that's not something that's consistent on a week-to-week basis. So I like Zach Moss a little bit better. Both are RB3s. Both are situations that if I have other options, I will try to avoid it if at all possible. Stephon Diggs comes in at wide receiver 12. I've talked about him every single week this year with pretty much the same lens, which is he has as much of a ceiling as anybody else out there, but he has almost a Keenan Allen level floor because of the double-digit targets that he's just consistently seeing on a week-to-week basis. And again, this game being one that on paper looks like could be the shootout of the week, feel pretty good about what Stephon Diggs is going to be able to give you on his return this week. John Brown missed Wednesday. He's going to miss every single Wednesday for the rest of the year, probably. He's back at practice in full yesterday. He'll probably practice in full again today. John Brown, every single week, in my eyes, as long as he's out there on the field, is a boomer bust wide receiver 4 option for you that you can play if you're hoping for a big play, especially in games where it looks like on paper it's going to be a shootout like this one. The backside corner for the Cardinals is banged up. Budda Baker is questionable if he's going to play. This opens up doors for guys like a John Brown to possibly be able to get that big play that you're looking for. Now, he actually had a nice floor game. He actually had a pretty involved target share last week, but we expected that to be the case against Seattle. I primed you guys all up for that. And I primed you guys up for the idea that if John Brown had a nice game because of his name value, because of the way that offense is played, because of Josh Allen, that he's somebody you could actually probably put into a package deal to sell for if you needed a better player down the road, like a Nick Chubb. He was that wide receiver 3 after last week that I thought you could package in and see if you could buy low on a type of player like that before he came back. Things of that nature. He'll still be a guy who's a wide receiver 4 boomer bust hit for us this week. And again, I stay with the same lens on Cole Beasley. If John Brown's out there, I'm not going to trust playing Cole Beasley because his involvement becomes very much in question as what you're going to see in any given week. It just is. So could he get you that 7-catch performance for 90 yards plus? He could. It's just as likely he gets you 2 catches for 23 yards. So again, I'm not touching a Cole Beasley when John Brown's out there on the field because it's just too inconsistent. And it's not like he has a super high ceiling to begin with where you're going for a boom or bust option either. So I'm not playing a Cole Beasley. Flip it over to the Cardinals side of the ball. The big question on everybody's mind is Kenyan Drake actually going to play? What looked like a horrendous ankle injury when it happened, a small tear, a situation where we thought at least it would be a high ankle sprain type of timeline where it'd be 4 to 6 weeks. This guy has pushed himself and pushed himself and pushed himself, and he's practicing in a limited capacity now, both Wednesday and Thursday. We're still waiting on the Cardinals practice report. That'll come out, later in the day with them being on the West Coast. But it's looking like Drake, at the very least, could wind up being a game time decision. Now, if he's out there, how much of a workload he would get? Would he be limited? I'd have to imagine yes. I'd have to imagine that if Drake plays, while it might not be 50-50 completely down the middle between him and a Chase Edmonds, it could be like a 55-45, maybe at best a 60-40 split that I think we're looking at between Drake and Edmonds. I do not believe for a second that if Drake comes back and plays that he's going to be healthy enough to come back and get a full workload as the lead running back for Arizona the way they've treated it before. And even then, he wasn't like he was getting great production. Everybody, if you're a Kenyan Drake owner, you're well aware that you were not getting the production out of Drake that you were hoping for this season, even though the volume has been there. And I just don't see that volume. I don't see that 19 to 20 carries in this first game back for Drake, where I think, frankly, he's coming back too soon. Now, I understand why he's trying to push himself to come back because he knows the second Chase Edmonds has a great game as the lead back. That could be it for him, given his contract situation. So I get why he's trying to push himself to come back, but I think he's coming back too early. I think he's going to be a high risk for re-injury. And if you have Chase Edmonds, I think you need to make sure you're holding on to him because there's a real chance it could still wind up being his backfield again, not just this week because he still could be Jake could still be ruled out. But if he does come back, I think there's a real chance for a re-injury here too. It's not a good situation. I don't think Drake should be coming back this week, but I really think at the end of the day, he's going to probably want to be a game time decision. So let's look at it from a different aspect of it. Talked about we think it might be a close split. Where does that leave a Drake and an Edmonds in this game? Well, it would leave them both. It would leave Drake as a low-end RB2. It would leave Chase Edmonds as an RB3. I still believe Edmonds probably would wind up being more involved in the passing game, even if Drake plays this week, just given, the ways to take some workload off of Drake. A big one would be not having him involved in the passing work as much. So I think Edmonds is still somebody you could probably play in the flex this week. But you're not going to love the ceiling because you're not going to know what kind of volume you're really getting. Same thing goes with Drake. I think he's somebody you can still play as a low-end RB2 because I expect him to get more of the carries if he actually does play. There's a Buffalo defense that running backs have been able to take advantage of. But again, if he doesn't score a touchdown, he has a low floor, and I don't think he's looking at the same volume that he was looking at in weeks past when you were pretty much just getting floor performances out of Kenyan Drake. So you're not going to be left with a feeling of you have a high ceiling out of either one of these guys if Drake plays. Now, let's say Drake does not play. Chase Edmonds would then become a high-end RB2 just because of the volume. Last week, I know he had a ton of volume, wasn't great against Seattle. Against the Dolphins there. You're expecting more production. But the Dolphins defense is now, I think, proven to everybody that they're a real deal. This is a real thing. This is not the Dolphins of old. This is a pretty solid defensive group. So while he definitely should have had better numbers, especially based on the volume that he got, no doubt, the Dolphins defense is definitely better than what this Bills defense is right now. It just is. So I think Edmonds, if he was to get that kind of volume again this week, I think we would see a much better game. At the very least, we see a high floor, and that would make him a high-end RB2 in my book. So that's what we're looking at from a fantasy value standpoint, depending upon whether or not Drake plays. We go to the wide receiver group, DeAndre Hopkins. I know it's been maybe a little bit more inconsistent than we've grown used to over the past few weeks recently. Still DeAndre Hopkins. We still know he's the number one look. We still know Kyler Murray wants to get him the ball. We still know he's a candidate to get double-digit targets. He comes into my wide receiver 2 on the week. I don't care that Tre'Davious White is guarding him. What did that matter for DK Metcalf? Tre'Davious White, while he's a good corner, really has yet to show me that he can actually take away the elite of the elite wide receivers in this league. Really haven't seen that be the case. So I'm not going to worry about it too much from a DeAndre Hopkins standpoint. He's my wide receiver 2 on the week. The real analysis here comes with Christian Kirk, who's been on fire. I think he has 5 weeks now where he's scored in every game, I want to say 6 touchdowns, if I can remember off the top of my head, maybe 7. Because I think he had 2 games where he had 2 touchdowns apiece. So he actually might be at 7 now. Over the past 5 weeks, at over 100 yards last week, he has set himself up as the second wide receiver in this offense. And while all this attention goes to DeAndre Hopkins and they're double covering him and cloud covering him, Christian Kirk's getting one-on-ones. And he already has a rapport going back to college with Kyler Murray. And he's playing really well. And he's playing as a deep threat. And he's a guy you could plug in. We have him at 31 on the week as a wide receiver 3 with big upside. Especially in this matchup against the Buffalo Bills, which Josh Norman has been a horrendous backside corner. So I like Christian Kirk a lot in a game in which we expect another shootout possibly. So Christian Kirk's going to be in my lineups, without a doubt. Wide receiver 31, and frankly, that might be a little bit too low. He should be probably closer to a wide receiver 2. So let's move on here. Let's talk about the Seattle Seahawks. Let's talk about the Los Angeles Rams. This should be a good game on paper with the Rams coming off the bye. We'll start on that side of the ball. Jared Goff, QB6. Yeah. Jared Goff is my top streaming quarterback of the week. Shouldn't really come as a surprise against Seattle, especially being that it's at home, where Jared Goff always plays much better. Coming off the bye, where Sean McVay is a very good coach, a very good game planner. Playing at Seattle, which is the worst secondary in the entire league. And although Cooper Kupp's a little bit banged up at the moment, still has a healthy enough Cooper Kupp where we expect him to be fine for the game. And Robert Woods. He should be okay in this one. Darrell Henderson is somebody who's been questionable, but they have stayed pretty strong on the idea that Henderson is going to play this Sunday. He did come back and practice in limited capacity yesterday, so that bears fruit that should be the direction in which he's heading. We have him as a low-end RB2 or RB19 on the week. It's still Darrell Henderson's job, as long as he's healthy and out there. Now, if he is hindered by that injury, could we see, sprinkle of Malcolm Brown, sprinkle of Cam Akers? Yeah, because this is still a situation in which 3 running backs could be involved at any given moment. That's why we have Darrell Henderson as more of a low-end RB2. Still a good matchup on paper. Should be a high-scoring game. And Henderson, they've been pretty strong on, was going to practice this entire time. He's had 2 weeks to get healthy, so it's going to be Darrell Henderson's ball. We think you can play him as a low-end RB2. I think the big thing comes to the wide receivers. We have Robert Woods, wide receiver 3 on the week. Cooper Kupp, wide receiver 7 on the week. When's the last time we were actually able to rank these 2 guys, not just as high-end on wide receiver 2s, but both as wide receiver 1s? And I know that might seem crazy, but given the matchup, given this situation, being that they're at home, what they're probably going to have to do to be able to keep pace with the Seattle Seahawks in this game in order to win it, you're going to have to lean on those guys. And being that they are such good route runners, both Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, I expect them to have no issues with getting separation in this game. None whatsoever. So I know Kupp's banged up. Still at wide receiver 7. Robert Woods should have a great game. I think you're going to see a lot of targets go both their ways, kind of like in the Dolphins game, except just more efficiency. I mean, that game, we saw Cooper Kupp get 20 targets. Now, he's not going to get 20 targets in this game, but could both Kupp and Robert Woods get double-digit targets? 100%. 100%. I love, nothing else, I love their floors this week, and they both have the best ceilings that they're going to possibly have. And if they both go off, given the nature of this Rams offense, you might have an opportunity before your trade deadlines kick in, most of them kicking in at week 12, to maybe sell high on a Cooper Kupp and a Robert Woods before your playoff stretch. So something to kind of keep in mind there too. But I'm playing these guys. I'm playing Goff, playing Woods, playing Kupp with high confidence in this game. And Henderson. The only thing I'm not touching is the tight end situation. Gerald Everett, Tyler Higbee, kind of split right now as far as targets go. Higbee's still playing ahead, but we know that's because he's a better blocker, which helps us, absolutely 0 for fantasy football. So it doesn't really matter. They've kind of rendered their tight ends useless, unfortunately, when it comes to fantasy. We talked about Seattle Seahawks. I don't know if there's a lot to go over here as far as, Russell Wilson, top 5 quarterback. Tyler Lockett, I know he's been a more boom or bust option as of late, but he's still a high-end wide receiver 2 with a high ceiling. Even last week, where he only had 4 catches for 40 yards, I believe it was, he still was in a situation where he could have had 2 touchdowns. There was a target. It would have been a tough play, but there was one where the ball, he did have a shot at it in the end zone, and he also got tackled at the 1-yard line on one of his catches early on in that game. So he was in line where he possibly could have had 2 touchdowns last week. And just given his offense, the way Russell Wilson's playing, even though he's been a little bit more boom or bust, I think Lockett is somebody you have to continue to play every single week in your lineups. I don't think you question that too much. You just know you might be dealing with a little bit of a floor, especially if it's DK Metcalf going crazy that week, which could happen any given week. And DK Metcalf, of course, is a wide receiver one. He's a top 10 wide receiver for us this week.